book that I don't have in print, but the PDF is online, and it's called The World of the Spirit. It's by Chico Xavier, and the spiritual author is Emmanuel. And it's called Patience. Wherever you may be, you represent the name which distinguishes you, the idea which directs you, the clothing which protects you, and the marks which identify you. For your own benefit, don't forget to carry with you, wherever you may be, the energy to patience, which will guarantee your serenity. If someone announces imminent catastrophes as if he had the voice of darkness in his throat, listen to him patiently, and you will see that life goes on, acting above all the calamities, like the sun which shines unwavering above all the cloudbursts. When trials come to you like a destructive high wind, suffer in patience, and you will draw renewed strength from it, like a tree that is revitalized through the anguish of pruning. In the face of the blow that strikes your very heart, bear with patience the pain of readjustment, and you will bravely cauterize the wounds of the heart by winning the laurels of experience. You suffer the unexpected injury from those persons who owe you affection. Nevertheless, endure it with patience, and tomorrow they will be more affectionate and better friends to you. Tolerate the destination of beloved companions who leave you with the burden of accumulated hard tasks, and patiently continue all the same with the work the world has reserved for you. And later, your ideals and services will be raised up into nourishment and shelter on behalf of these same friends. Irritation is defeat in advance. Complaint is a postponement of the best thing to do. To demand is to complicate. To censor is to destroy. Amid all the evil done to you, use the diet of patience, assuring your own restoration. And never we may be induced to condemn someone for some fault or other. Let us review our own weaknesses, and we will quickly realize that we are still able to function only because of God's eternal patience. So let's do our prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you for the possibility of being here today, of being here together. We thank you for the beautiful day you gave us today that we will enjoy when we leave here. And we thank you for all the blessings that you shower upon us. We thank you, Lord, for all the opportunities you give us to practice our patience, to develop our patience. Even though they look like problems initially, they are actually a chance for us to practice patience and to decide between what our ego wants and what we know is right. May we today here take home a little bit more food for thought to help us reflect on our own failures, reflect on other people's failures, and help us understand that first we need patience with ourselves so that we can have patience with others. So be it. Oh wow. I closed my eyes. When I open my eyes, there's double the people. That's good. Crazy. All right. Okay, so I thought you were going to be there.
Me too.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, so today we're going to talk about something that everybody has lots of, if it works, out there. Patience. Don't we all have lots of patience?
You're very positive.
Or do we need to work on it?
I see.
So do we think, and you don't have to answer out loud, but do we think we have enough? Or can we still improve on it? And why is it important? Why is patience important? Why is patience important?
It's one of the virtues.
Patience is a virtue. That's a popular saying. But why?
We don't take brusque actions. We think before doing things, so we won't regret the things we do or say.
Good one, yeah. What else?
When we practice patience, we keep ourselves calm.
Okay. And staying calm, is it a good thing for us? Is it a good thing for others? Okay, so just to give you an idea, so today's talk was based on Spirit's book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, O Consolador. Hasn't been translated yet as far as I know, so please be forgiving with my poor translation. Pontos e Contos, which hasn't been translated yet, so bear with me. Our Father, this little book. Does anybody know this book? Of course you do. This book is also by Chico Xavier, and the spiritual author is the Spirit Mei Mei. It's actually a kid's book, and it's called Our Father because it takes the Our Father prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, and for each verse it has stories for the kids of virtues. Like I did this whole book with my kids in the gospel at home. So we would read and then reflect and talk about what they had understood about the story and everything. And then a book for kids talks about patience. Maybe we adults needed to take the hint. And Celeiro de Bênçãos by Divaldo, spiritual author Joana de Ângeles. So, what is patience? What's patience? Does this take patience?
Sure.
Yeah, that shows us why Persian rugs are so expensive. Right? This is Brazilian. Renda de bilro. Does this take patience? This dragon is all made with paper. It's an origami, but it's made with thousands of pieces of paper, like a puzzle. Does that take patience? Does waiting in a very long line take patience? Oh, stop it. You're sending stuff, my phone is vibrating.
Not me, it's the FSS.
Does it take patience to go shopping with someone who takes forever? You go in, you buy your stuff, you come out, and the person hasn't bought anything. They've gone into 10 stores, look around, they don't buy anything, and you have to wait. Does that take patience? Yes.
On all these examples, the first one, she's doing by choice. The second, the third, the fourth, they are doing by choice. Maybe not choice if they're looking for I don't know, if they want to watch a game, it's a choice. If they are on a line because they are obligated to be in the line is another thing. And there, it's not by her choice, but she's waiting for somebody else. In the example that you gave,
But isn't it a choice as well? Can't you just
or she
get
could
up and
have
go?
taken, right? But I had a similar situation where I was with my sister 2 hours at Dan's store with my kids, and she was looking for shoes for her kids. Everybody was so mad, and I couldn't just leave her there and take home because she was visiting, right?
You know
So,
what I do with my father? I did it actually when he was here in May. I drop him off at the fishing store, and I tell him to call me when he's done. And it's usually 4 or 5 hours later. First time he came here, and he went to Outdoor World at Cross Iron Mills. I dropped him off in the morning. I picked him up at 5. So, yeah.
And then
Even though I am a woman, I'm not into the stereotype of shopping. I have no patience for that. I check what I want online, go buy and leave. So, yeah.
So I feel that in that sense, patients, there are different stages, right? When we're
Yes, but
when we're in a chaotic
even
situation.
stuff by choice. Even it still takes patience to wait there. And for example, with my father, it's not just that I didn't have the patience to wait for him. He didn't want to feel pressured. So he said, "You go home. I'll call you when I'm done." So there's no pressure. He didn't want to feel like, "Oh, she's out there waiting for me sitting on a bench or something." So, but again, what I'm trying to show with these pictures is that patience, it's not just one thing. There's not just one concept. There's not just one situation where we need patience. It shows itself in different ways. What about this picture? Do we need patience with our kids? Gosh, don't we? But do we need patience with our aging parents as well? When they start repeating the same story over and over again? When they start asking the same question over and over again? Just like we did when we were kids. But then, as grown-ups, do we have patience to listen to them? Or do we just say, "Mom, you've said that already. Dad, that's the 3rd time you asked me the same thing." So we only think about patience with kids. Maybe we also need to think about patience with our own parents, right?
Before you go, there's other example there too. Between them, like the couple.
Couple, yes. That's, yeah. Probably last year, the whole year, we talked about the healthy couples relationship. And yes, it's a daily. And this is by choice. Most of the time, we're not talking about countries that have like arranged marriage. Let's talk about our world here, Western culture. We choose our partners. And we can just break up and each one go their way. So staying together is a choice, and it does demand a whole lot of patience to work out all the little things and the big things as well. Thank you very much for that example. It's just that now that I'm single, I tend to forget that one. Okay, so according to the dictionary, patience is an ability or willingness to suppress relentlessness or annoyance when confronted with delay. For example, to have patience with a slow learner. So here it says ability or willingness. Are there some people who seem to be naturally patient, who have the ability? It's inborn, right? Did God make them patient? Definitely not. If they show that ability right now, if they have the ability right now, it's because throughout their incarnations, they've been developing that patience. And then we just look at them and we're like, oh, it's easy for you. You're already patient. But what about all the time it took that person to develop their patience? And then, when we don't have the ability because we've been working on it, we can still have the willingness. Right? We need to want to be patient. Just sitting and waiting for a lightning to strike us and make us patient is a cartoon idea. And it's not gonna happen. Patience is a quiet, steady perseverance, even-tempered care, diligence to work with patience. Right? Not being in a rush. I need to get it done. I need to be the first to finish my test and give it to the teacher. So, pace. And it's the quality of being patient as the bearing of provocation, annoyance, misfortune, or pain, without complaint, loss of temper, irritation, or the like. Easy, right? No? According to St. Augustine, patience is the companion of wisdom. Do you agree? Can a very impatient person be wise? Will they make good decisions if they're in a hurry? Probably not. We can't say never, but probably not. And St. Augustine also says that the reward of patience is patience. If you're patient, you are rewarded with more patience. You develop it more and more and more. And then we have the popular saying that patience is a virtue. And it couldn't be any more right. Patience is definitely a virtue. In the book O Consolador, question 253, the question is, and does everybody know O Consolador? Yeah? It's a book of questions and answers, just like the Spirit's book, but it's Emmanuel answering the questions, okay? It's also Chico Xavier, spiritual author is Emmanuel. So the question is, are virtues a gift from God, or are they achieved by His creation? Right? So, you know the little joke that we have in Brazil? That we say that before we are born there are like lines. There's the line of beauty, there's the line of patience, there's the line of whatever, and we say, oh, that person skipped that line. Or that person went to that line twice, right? So is it a gift from God? Do we stay in line for the virtues that He's going to give us for free? Buy one, get two? Or do we achieve? Right? His creation. We are His creation. So do we achieve? And here's Emmanuel's answer. Pain, struggles, and experiences are blessed opportunities given by God to His creation throughout time. Does it feel like a blessed opportunity? When your kid is yelling at the grocery store on the ground, wailing hands and feet and screaming, I want it? Does it sound like a blessed opportunity given by God? But it is, because otherwise, how would we be able to practice the virtue, to create that virtue within us? However, virtues are always a sublime and eternal achievement of each spirit on the roads of life, eternally incorporated to their values, achieved through their own work and efforts. So, The first time my kid did that, maybe I slapped my kid and took him home, like dragged him home in front of everybody. And it's interesting when people are watching you deal with your own child. It's very interesting because if you don't do anything, you're too soft. But if you do something, oh, what a horrible parent. Right? So we're being judged all the time.
We're gonna be judged.
Yeah. So forget the judgment part, because it's gonna happen anyway, and everybody has a different opinion, and everybody knows how to raise someone else's kids. The first time, that was my reaction. If the second time I was able to actually take the time, instead of dragging my child, and depending on the age, try to explain as much as possible, no, we're not going to buy it. Or just picked up the child without slapping, pick up the child and leave the place, instead of slapping my child. When do I feel better? When I exploded just like the child? Or when I kept my composure, no matter how much I wanted to slap the child? Right? We won't have to regret slapping our child. Or, again, if we talk about a partner or parents, does it feel, when we are having an argument, saying what comes to your mind to hurt that person just because they are annoying you, will make you feel good afterwards? But holding your tongue and truly, conscientiously trying to treat that person the way you would like to be treated, regardless of what the other person is doing, later feels a whole lot better than hurting and having to apologize, right? And some people do not apologize. And they say it out loud. I do not apologize. Love me or leave me. My way or the highway, that's it. So, all choices that we make, right? The next question, 254. What is patience and how do we acquire it? $1 million question. So, what does Emmanuel answer? True patience is always an externalization of the soul that has achieved much love in itself in the broader to give it to other through examples. Does it make sense? So when I am able to externalize the much love that I have already achieved, when I have it for myself and I am able to give it because I already have it.
So whatever the person is doing, because whoever has achieved that love is going to respond calmly, peacefully, and compassion of the other, because they are still on that path of acquiring.
Exactly.
Which is harder because, especially when I'm keep repeating for 15 years.
Yeah. But yes, it comes from self-reflection, from the understanding that what I am giving is not just patience, but it's love. It's the love that I have already acquired. Either love for that person, if it's someone close to me, or even if it's a stranger. If we talk about the brotherly love or sisterly love that Jesus gave us. So it's that love we're talking about. It's the full understanding in our conscience that even a stranger is still my brother or sister in humankind. Easy exercise? It's not easy. But is it difficult? No. No, it's not difficult. Because every time we say something is difficult, we're putting a barrier. We're saying, it's difficult, I can't. So instead of difficult, we can say it's a lot of hard work. It's the exercise. That's why it's hard work, because we have to exercise that patience. It doesn't come naturally. If we aren't born with the ability, which means we've been exercising throughout our incarnations, if we're still in the hard work of exercising it, right? It's hard work. It's working towards it. It's not difficult, I can't. It's, I can, but I really have to apply myself. I really have to make the effort. The answer continues. This love is the fraternal expression that regards all creations as brother and sisters under any circumstances. What we just said right now. Does that come automatically to us? It still takes some thinking, right? It still takes some stop. The whole repeating for 15 years, it takes like break the cycle, stop, think. If that's not working, what could work? Let's try and re-engineer this whole thing. Is that easy? No, it's not. It's a lot of hard work. Now, we have a few more clues here to answer our question of why is it essential or important that I develop this virtue. Now, do we need this virtue for ourselves? Is it important to have that virtue for ourselves? Does it benefit us directly, solidly? Does it benefit just us? In the Gospel according to Spiritism, Chapter 9, and chapter 9 is Blessed are the meek, abençoados são os mansos e pacíficos, pois herdarão a terra. In the instructions of the spirits, there is this item number 7. I recommend reading the whole chapter, of course, but chapter 7, there's a spirit that talks specifically about patience. It's, I think, 4 or 5 paragraphs, so bear with me, it's quite a bit of text, but the message is really important. So this spirit says, pain is a blessing sent by God, just like Emmanuel told us, right? To all his elected. So when you suffer, do not allow yourself to become afflicted. Rather, bless the omnipotent God, who, through the pain of this world, has chosen you to receive glory in heaven. Such a beautiful message. But again, does it feel like that when your partner is yelling at you, let's go, and you're trying to say goodbye to people at a party? Doesn't feel like such a blessing. But again, reflection, reflection, reflection. And then the Spirit keeps saying, be patient, because this is also a charity. Everyone should practice the law of charity as taught by Christ, who is God's envoy, o enviado de Deus. Charity given to the poor in the form of alms é esmola, is the easiest of all. So remember the question, does it benefit me? Yes, of course, because I am not going to be such a nervous wreck. But does it benefit the other? Yes, because it is a fulfillment of the law of charity. Giving alms, that is esmola, giving alms is easy because we give what we don't want anymore. We give our excess, we give our extra, we give old clothes, we give extra food. That is the easy charity. but the charity that involves our feelings, the charity that involves treating our neighbor in the biblical sense, nosso próximo, the way we would truly like to be treated, that is charity. And that's why being patient also benefits others, right? The Spirit continues. However, there is another kind of charity which is much more laborious, muito mais trabalhosa, and so consequently offers higher merit. Everything that takes more effort gives you a better reward, doesn't it? Even if it's just the sense of accomplishment. The sense of accomplishment of doing something really hard is always a lot higher than the sense of accomplishment of doing something easy, right? I haven't been able to convince my son of that yet, but I'm trying. That is to forgive all those placed in our pathway by God to act as instruments for our suffering and to test your patience. Ooh, is it easy to forgive that boss that makes your life a living hell? Is it easy to forgive that person who always pushes your button and drives you insane? Is it easy to forgive that person who is jealous of you and tries to pull the rug from under your feet all the time? However, it is a lot more work than just stopping and not slapping your child. It's a lot more work, but it will offer us a bigger sense of accomplishment and more merit before God's eyes, because it's harder to achieve. And once we achieve it, the reward for ourselves first is, I did it. I was able to forgive, when in the past I wasn't, right? So some people, again, we need to see them as instruments, not problems in our lives, but they are instruments, they are tools that are guiding us in one direction. If we insist on going in the opposite direction, we will have suffered, we will have had the pain anyway, and we won't have learned. We won't have developed the virtue, right? Does it make sense? Because they're gonna test your patience anyway. If you just react, if you just pay with the same currency, se você pagar na mesma moeda, toma lá da cá, bateu, levou, you are gonna go through the same pain, same suffering, same annoyance. You're gonna be irritated the same way, but you won't have taken anything valuable with you from that experience. The experience will have been worthless. Right? Does it make sense? Okay. And then the Spirit continues. Like I said, it's not too long, it's just that the font is big. We know full well that life is difficult. Being composed of so many apparently useless, insignificant, and valueless things, which act as repeated pinpricks, agulhadas, and end up hurting us. Doesn't it feel like sometimes like small things hurt you and you think, why? This is useless. Why do I have to go through this? Like, what's the meaning of this? It makes no sense. However, if on the one hand we observe with care the duties imposed on us, and on the other hand we recognize the consolations and compensations received, then we must admit that the blessings are far more numerous than the pains, if we have learned from the experiences, right? If we learn, the compensations received will be very valuable. When our eyes are raised up to the heaven, our burdens, a nossa carga, appears to be less heavy than when our brow é o rosto, a sobrancelha, is bowed down to the earth. Right? When you bend down, your load seems a lot heavier than when you're looking up. Courage, my friends. Christ is your model. He suffered far more than any of you and had nothing to offer penitence for. No sins, no mistakes that he needed to fix. Whereas we must atone for our past and thereby fortify ourselves for the future. So be patient, be Christians. This word summarizes everything. What does it mean to be Christian?
In action, all stations. As much as possible.
Does everybody like to hear the word Christ or Jesus or Christian?
Follow Christ. Evil road.
But have you ever met somebody that when they hear the word Jesus or Christ, they run away?
I feel like nowadays I feel like this with among the youth, like the younger kids. Basically, teenagers going up to early 20s, they are not much into it.
Yeah, my feelings because we live in, like a more materialist society.
Yeah.
And like it's really hard here when you say something, everybody, it's coming. Okay. Like it's what I'm facing daily basis in my family as well here, my Canadian family.
Mm-hmm.
Don't start with that. There you go, everyone. To meditation, Brazilian meditation place. This is what I'm saying, if I say something and just, I know it's a Brazilian meditation place. I'm going there to meditate. It's hard.
Yep. And it's interesting. When I first got here, quite a while ago, some of the first Canadians I met, they belonged to a church, and they wanted to take us to that church by all means, shape, and form they could. And we always resisted, me and my ex-husband. We never went, we always resisted. But for one reason or another, I met a whole lot of Christians who wanted to take me to church, Canadians, Brazilians, and I used to say, it's not really my thing, and but it's interesting because about 2 or 3 years ago, I heard someone who came from Quebec saying that Canadians do not want to listen to the word Jesus or Christ. I was surprised. I was like, no. Like, a whole lot of them tried to drive me to their church. But then, as I started paying attention, I realized that actually I got in touch with a minority. That most of them, when they hear the word Christ, are Christians. Just like in Brazil, when we hear someone talking about Jesus too much, we think, oh, that's an evangelist. Oh no, I don't want anything to do with that person. And here, it's very similar. We had a person who came in and spoke to us, and he's a Canadian and he's getting started with Spiritism and everything. And he mentioned that the first time he read that Spiritism was a Christian belief, he just stayed away. He was like, I don't want anything to do with that. Right? And then he was like, no, but you don't need to put Jesus in the mix. You don't need to put Jesus in the mix. But then after you have a conversation, why there's a stigma with Christians? Because after the first 200 or 300 years after Jesus, where Christianity was in the right path, we all decided to take it on a totally different path. And we decided to use that as a way of controlling people and a form of power. And we did atrocities. We did horrible things in the name of Jesus. And people associate Jesus with what we as humans did. So that's where a lot of that comes from, right? And people don't understand that if you look at Jesus, the Spirit who incarnated, and all the examples he gave us, you are not going to find a flaw there. So when the Spirit's saying that, be Christians, this word summarizes everything. That's what the Spirit's talking about. Us following the example Jesus gave us. Not the people who spoke in his name, but Jesus himself. And even with translation mistakes, all the examples are there in the Gospel, no Novo Testamento. Right? If we read, if we look at the stories, he exemplified, he was the best example humanity ever had of words and actions. Because we had lots of good examples of words before Jesus and even after Jesus. But nobody was a better example with words and actions. And that's what people don't understand. They can't disconnect what humanity did in Jesus' name and what Jesus himself did. So when the Spirit says be Christians, he's talking about follow the example of Jesus.
Words and actions.
Not of the people who spoke in his name, but his example, right? Now we go back. Why is it essential that we develop patience? From everything that we've seen so far, how can we summarize that?
It's essential for our progress as studies.
But what will patience do for us? What do I get from it? O que eu ganho com isso?
Understanding.
E o que?
Comprehension. Inner self-knowing.
Self-knowledge.
Thank you. Portuguese and English. Yeah, and it's even for our mood, our body, our chemistry, and our body. Like we, for sure, we just talking and more, like this spiritual level, but you can see the reflection in our physical, like.
Yes, because
And-
every disease starts in the spirit.
In the spirit,
Well, not every, most.
And patience, bring to like that understanding, comprehension, self-knowledge.
What does patience do for us when we're facing pain? Or a very trying situation? Very challenging situation. What can patience do for us?
Resignation.
Help us to act what wisdom.
Yeah, like St. Augustine said, patience is the companion of wisdom. With patience, we can be wise. We're not going to rush a decision. We're not going to rush an action that we might regret later, right? And in the kids' book, Our Father, in the chapter that talks about Thy will be done, que seja feita a vossa vontade. What's God's will?
Love, compassion,
What does God want for us?
happiness.
Basically, happiness. And how can we achieve happiness? Evolving. But why?
Because
Why does evolving will bring happiness?
Because we're born.
The same
Simple and
action,
unaware.
the same action can make you extremely sad or can make you peaceful. Depends on how you receive and understand what is happening to you.
And what do you need to receive that action in a proper way?
Patience. Because you have to
What is patience? a
Virtue.
So that's why evolving will bring us happiness. Because the more virtuous we are, the more virtues we have, the better we will face every situation, difficult or not, good or bad, with peace of mind, with serenity.
And I think you are more connected with the God's laws in a way that you feel a little bit better God. And with this feeling, it is like a snowball. You're like improving yourself and then connecting with God and God's laws. At the same time, God's connecting with you somehow, and you feel inside yourself the happiness growing up in a way that's not just because I won the lottery or I passed my course or anything. It's just because you're in your path, you're conscious about the path you are right now, and you're happy to be in that moment no matter what's going on around.
I will just add that we're connected to God. When you said somehow, that somehow is exactly through the divine laws, through the virtues. Because the more we develop, the closer we are to Him, not physically, but in understanding. Why do we say that? Why do we get along with certain people? Because we have similar ideas, because we have similar tastes. So we get closer to God because we are getting closer to His laws. It's just like a radio station. We are tuning the right frequency.
But I believe there's a little bit more that's beyond
There's a lot more.
the knowledge and beyond the feeling that you're just starting to touch in. But it's just my way to see it. That's why I see
Yes.
that
No,
somehow.
you are absolutely right. There is a whole lot more. It's a lot more complex. And like you said, this is just a simple idea for us to start touching it. The road is very long, but we need to get started at some point, right? So the idea is, let's get started. So in the little, maybe I don't know if you can see, but here it says, and again, it's for the kids. At the end of every chapter, there's like a page with a summary and things to talk about or think about. And then things to think about. We can recognize God's will in all kinds of situations. In times of suffering, His patience. So again, the opportunity that God gives, the blessed gift of an annoying person, the blessed gift of a perfectionist boss, of a difficult partner. So when we're suffering, what is God's will for us? What virtue are we being invited to develop? We're being invited because sometimes we refuse the invitation, right? Sometimes we say, no, I'm not going. So we are being invited to develop patience. So again, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, the Spirit says, be patient because this is also a charity. Everyone should practice the law of charity as taught by Jesus. Everything so far, dandy and nice. How do I do this? Because telling someone you need to be patient is easy. Right? You know those situations when somebody looks at you and say, calm down, and that makes you even more nervous. You say, don't tell me to calm down. Same thing with patience. Don't tell me to be patient. Right? So telling someone to do it is very easy. But how do we do it? In the book Celeiro de Bênçãos by Divaldo Franco, Joana de Angeli says, through regular exercises of reflection and restraint. You know restraint? Se segurar. Of impulses of the inferior personality. So somebody says something, I want to say it back. but I know I shouldn't. So I'm gonna hold my tongue. So through regular exercises, you will shape innermost conditionings which produce calm and balance, culminating in inner harmony, creator of patience. And then she says, unquestionably, such achievement can't be reached in a single step under a momentary impulse. Okay, I was able not to slap my child once. I'm patient, check, I'm done. Next virtue? No. It's not a single step. It's not a momentary impulse. Being patient once doesn't mean I already have that virtue. It definitely means it was a great victory because I didn't follow my initial impulse. I held back. I restrained myself consciously. So great victory, but the battle is not won yet, right? No, I mean, the battle is won, but not the war. So how do we develop patience? Everybody has a different way. Everybody has different exercises that they do. So this one here is just a suggestion, just an idea of an exercise that we can do. So every time we try to break or bend é dobrar, right? So every time we try to break or just bend one of the divine laws, right, to my benefit, I need to be patient, but not with that person. Is that following the law? No. I'm trying to break it or to bend. So I'm patient with everybody else. But that person doesn't deserve it. So that's breaking the law, that's bending the law, that's twisting things, right? So every time we try to bend the law, there's a conflict. At some point, my conscience is going to say, Renata, you can't. If you're going to be patient, it has to be with everybody. You can't select people. So there's a conflict. So what's the first thing that we need to do? Perceive, realize, notice, acknowledge. I ran out of synonyms. I don't know if anybody has any other, but I think I'm done with synonyms. So we need to see, realize, understand, recognize to ourselves that we try to break the law. That's the very first step. Because if I think I'm right, there's nothing to fix. If I truly believe that person doesn't deserve my patience, that's it. Case closed. But if I listen to my conscience and I realize that I tried to break the law, and this actually is for any virtue that we are trying to work on more specifically. For some people it's patience, for some people it's forgiveness, for some people it's serenity. So we're all on different boats, on the same big boat on earth as humanity, right? But we are all trying to achieve individual goals. So for whatever virtue we're trying to develop, this is an exercise that will work for all of them. So I realized a situation where I was impatient. So first step, I need to realize. Then I need to conceive. And this conceive is actually in the original sense of the word, conceber, to give birth, to bring to light, to create the virtue. In this case, patience. So I realized I was impatient. I think about the situation. Then I conceive, I create patience. Maybe not this time because it's gone, but for the next time. My mind is already aware that if it happens again, that person, similar situation, I am prepared to be patient as opposed to lose my patience, right? And then become patient. Again, it's not a single step. It's not just once. It's constant exercise. For anybody who works outside the house, for anybody who has a boss, for anybody who has kids, anybody who is married, we know that we are going to have probably dozens or hundreds of these opportunities every single day, right? Every single day, several opportunities with kids, with partner, with bosses, at school, doesn't matter where we are, we always have, with ourselves, exactly.
Especially when you know better, but you cannot do it or practice.
Exactly. So we go back. First step, realize. I've realized. Second step, conceive in my mind like the mental image of me being patient next time. And then when the situation comes again, actually exercise that mental image I made in my mind. Project and actually do what I conceived in my mind, that I will be patient.
It's interesting. I haven't finished that. I'm just watching documentary on Netflix that's called Heal. Have you seen?
No.
Heal? It's not. Yes, I've seen. So for a long time and throughout all the burdens that we have gone through since we came to Canada specifically, some parts I talk to people say be positive, think differently, or seek another way to see things, right? And then, especially with the kids, and I said I can't just because I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, right? And talking to my boss, she said, I think you should see this documentary. And then talks at the beginning talking about a guy that he was in an accident, a bike accident, and was run over by a vehicle. And then basically he was condemned to be paralyzed. And took him 6 weeks. They don't call God. He calls the universal intelligence that created us.
Yep. Whatever name you give.
Train my brain.
A rose by any name is a rose.
3 hours a day, 3 hours a day. Train my brain to think and to believe that the supreme intelligence that created my body, that makes me breathing every day, makes me surviving, makes everything in my to be who I am, I had to train my brain that the supreme intelligence that created me would recreate my spine. And for the period of 12 weeks, he started walking again.
It's these things that look
So
like
it's the power of your brain to reprocess and reprogram your thoughts, right?
Yes. However, that is something that even that anybody can do, right? However, things.
But I don't know if anybody can achieve, but we can
Anybody,
start doing, right?
yes, anybody can. Like it, he did use his will accordingly. Now, what we need to be careful is what we see nowadays. Like a lot of people, even those documentaries are very positive because they give you other ideas. However, what we need to be careful with is nowadays everybody has formulas for everything. And that's what we need to understand. What worked for him won't necessarily work for someone else. So we need to be careful with the formulas. We need to find our own way. And it's going to come through self-reflection because your issues are not the same as his issues. So your path is not going to be the same. So we need to be careful with the formulas because the formulas take into consideration a few things, but not necessarily the divine laws. And that's what we need to understand.
And
the moment we try to break or bend, there will be a conflict, right? In our conscience, or it will show itself physically somehow. So sometimes the formulas can help as long as we have the self-reflection and we're not doing things blindly.
Yeah, for example, we see on the news the couple, the parents that...
Probably 2-3 minutes. We have finished. It's just the comments.
The other lady was treating cancer just with meditation I don't know, like medicine is here to help us. I don't
Yes.
believe everything can be cured by just positive thinking and meditation. The same as we see like the parents that decide to give the child with meningitis dandelion plants to cure and the child died, right?
Yeah.
They refuse to give medication.
Again,
So I
it's
don't
being
believe it.
careful. It's being careful with formulas. Again, for example, somebody who is a spiritist and has a deeper knowledge of the law of reincarnation, of all of that, sometimes we need to understand that it was in your program, it was in your spiritual contract that you could develop that disease, and there's a reason for that. Sometimes we volunteer for that. So if we just take the formula of positive thinking will cure everything, just an example because we hear that from some people. If we just take that formula into consideration without taking into consideration that there's a whole lot of lives behind. There's a reason I am where I am, the way I am, with the people I am, and all of that. So the formula can help, but we need to be careful not to ignore, as spiritists, for example, not to ignore all the knowledge we have, that there is a reason for that. I'm not saying, oh, if I was supposed to have cancer, I'll have cancer, whatever. I have a friend who passed away in April of 2013, but she, at 56, and she had 5 different types of cancer. The first one at 30. She completely cured 4. And she kept saying, it's not cancer that's going to take me, it's not cancer that's going to take me. In the end it was, but like she was able to overcome 4, and they were all completely different, in different places and of different kinds. You can't say, oh, it's something that stayed behind. No, she eradicated 4 different ones. So, there is
that maybe she was supposed to go through.
We need to find the balance between what we call determinism or fatality. It had to be that way because as a spiritist, if we read trustworthy books, we will see that some people have changed their program through their actions. Chico has a brother who was supposed to become schizophrenic or something like this, but because of the work he was doing with Chico, that was removed from his program. So we know it's possible, so we need to be very careful. The one size fits all doesn't work. Yes, Maria?
Yeah, and we cannot forget about it, everything is based on science as well.
Yes.
Like certain kind of bodies have certain, if they are depends, like regenerate in different ways based on their DNA that was conceived, like in their parents' spirit, like it's in the science behind for sure that we can use like this part, but it's the science, and each body will acknowledge things in a different way. As in 80s, like French and German, they start with the holistic like system for medicine, and we can see a little bit more, but we don't have all the knowledge.
Yeah, we don't have time anymore, so I'm sorry I'll have to cut us short here. But when DNA first became this thing, at first they isolated the genes, and it was like 5% of the whole thing, and they called the other 95% genetic garbage. What have they been finding out through time? That there's no garbage there. Some of that is actually what André Luiz explains. It's like predisposition. Why do identical twins, one develops whatever disease and the other doesn't? They have the same genetic code. So we have a few predispositions, and the way we live our lives will determine, do we develop or not? The potential is there in the DNA. Will we develop or not? That will depend on how we live our lives. Physically, mentally, spiritually, behavior. Thank you.
Thank you for exercising our patience.
Yes, that's true.
So it was good because it was a great day exercising still is, as you can see, exercising patience with the kids. So we talked about the lesson from Jesus when he says to Peter, you may not understand or you do not realize what I'm doing now, but later you will understand. So we reflect a lot about how important is patience for waiting, and we made the metaphor about the tree that comes from the seed, and we gotta wait for it to grow, and then give our beautiful, in this case, apples. So thank you very much, guys. You did a great job. And by the way, we exercised a lot of patience today, for example, because they didn't do it together. They did it one per time, so they had to wait. And when we created the lineup, everybody, oh, I want to be the first, and then we created the lineup and we inverted the lineup. So the first one was the last. So it was really good to exercise patience. So good job, guys. Thank you. Don't do that.
Okay. So we'll do